As the battle waged on, Nahai was growing more exhausted with each passing moment. Despite his cunning and the use of his Skinwalker abilities, the Gorgon seemed to be growing stronger, as if feeding on the very energy of their struggle. Nahai knew he needed to finish the battle soon, or risk losing everything he had fought so hard to achieve. The Gorgon, sensing Nahai's fatigue, began to press its advantage, its snake-like hair lashing out with renewed vigor. Nahai dodged and countered, summoning his dark energy to deflect the Gorgon's attacks, but the relentless onslaught left him with no opportunity to strike back. Finally, the Gorgon managed to land a devastating blow, sending Nahai crashing to the ground. In an instant, the Gorgon was upon him, its massive tail coiling around Nahai's body, squeezing the life from him with crushing force. Nahai struggled to breathe, his vision growing blurry as the pressure intensified. It seemed as though this might be the end for the cunning Skinwalker, his fate sealed by the monstrous Gorgon. But then, just as all hope seemed lost, a wicked grin spread across Nahai's face. He had been waiting for this moment, biding his time, allowing the Gorgon to believe it had won. With the last of his strength, Nahai tapped into the very essence of his Skinwalker powers, calling upon the ancient magic that coursed through his veins. Suddenly, Nahai's form began to shift and change, his body writhing and twisting beneath the Gorgon's grip. The creature's eyes widened in shock as it realized what was happening, but it was already too late. Nahai had transformed into a massive, powerful bear, his crushing strength now a match for the Gorgon's. The Gorgon, caught off guard by Nahai's unexpected transformation, struggled in vain to break free from his deadly embrace. With a swift and merciless strike, Nahai's powerful bear claws slashed through the Gorgon's scales, tearing into its flesh and delivering a devastating blow. As the Gorgon's body went limp, its life force rapidly draining away, Nahai released his grip and shifted back into his humanoid form. He stood over the defeated creature, his chest heaving with the effort of the battle, a dark satisfaction in his eyes. The Gorgon's reign of terror had come to an end, brought down by the cunning and ruthless Nahai. With the battle won, Nahai left the lifeless Gorgon behind, his mind focused on the present, the taste of victory still fresh in his mouth. He had proven himself once again, his mastery of the Skinwalker's dark arts, securing his place as a force to be reckoned with in this new world. Nahai had always preferred to work alone, his cunning and ruthlessness allowing him to maintain control over his own destiny. But in this new world, with the lines between man and cryptid blurred, he found himself drawn into the dark web of alliances that had formed among the more malevolent creatures of the realm. It was an uneasy partnership, fraught with danger, but it provided Nahai with resources and protection he could not have achieved on his own. Over time, however, his involvement with these other cryptids began to take its toll. Their activities drew the attention of the human military, and soon the net began to tighten around them all. Nahai, as cunning and ruthless as he was, could not avoid the inevitable. His location was exposed, his cover blown, and he found himself cornered by the very forces he had sought to evade. But Nahai was not one to surrender easily. He was a perfectionist, constantly honing his skills and pushing the limits of his dark abilities. Every action he took, every plan he made was executed with precision and care, ensuring that he would remain a step ahead of his enemies. Even now, as he faced the prospect of capture, he remained calm and calculating, his mind working tirelessly to devise a strategy to escape the military's grasp. As the hours passed, Nahai meditated in the shadows, his thoughts dark and focused. He knew that sacrifices would have to be made to ensure his survival. If that meant betraying his fellow cryptids, using them as pawns in his desperate bid for freedom, then so be it. With the inevitability of the military's arrival looming, Nahai steeled himself for the coming conflict. He was prepared to face them, to fight if necessary, but he was also determined to escape their clutches and eventually find his way out of any prison they might throw him in. For Nahai, defeat was not an option. He would do whatever it took to remain free, to continue his dark existence and maintain his place in the world. As the first sounds of approaching troops echoed through the night, Nahai's resolve only grew stronger, his cold, calculating eyes filled with the fire of determination. As the shadows stretched out around him, Nahai surveyed the situation with a calculating gaze. He had always preferred to work alone, but circumstances had forced him to join forces with other malevolent cryptids. It was this alliance, however, that had drawn the attention of the human military, and now their net was closing in on him. Nahai crouched in the darkness, his mind racing with thoughts of escape. "I never should have joined them," he muttered under his breath. "Their recklessness has exposed us all." Even as he contemplated his next move, he knew that sacrifices would have to be made to ensure his survival. He had never been one to shy away from the necessary evils of his way of life. With a deep breath, Nahai focused his thoughts. "I must remain calm," he told himself. "I can't allow fear to cloud my judgment." As a perfectionist, he knew that every action he took and every plan he made had to be executed with precision and care. As the hours passed, Nahai continued to meditate in the shadows. He knew that his fellow cryptids could not be trusted, that he would have to rely on his own cunning and ruthlessness to find a way out. "I will use them as pawns if I must," he thought, his resolve hardening. The sound of approaching troops reached Nahai's sensitive ears, and he tensed, ready for action. "They will come for me, but I will not be taken easily," he vowed. "I will fight if necessary, but my ultimate goal is to escape. I will not be caged like some weak human." As the first signs of the military's arrival became evident, Nahai's determination grew. He would do whatever it took to remain free, to continue his dark existence and maintain his place in the world. "I am Nahai," he whispered, his voice cold and deadly. "I will not be defeated." "Get ready," shouted the military commander. The troops were closing in on Nahai and his fellow cryptids, and the tension in the air was thick. Nahai looked around at the other cryptids, their faces twisted with rage and determination. "We fight together, but remember, every one of you is expendable," he hissed, his voice cold and calculated. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air as the battle began. Nahai could sense the fear of the human soldiers, but he knew they were well trained and would not give up easily. "I will not be taken alive," he thought, his eyes darting around the battlefield. "But neither will I be slain." Nahai unleashed his powers, sending a wave of dark energy toward the advancing soldiers. As they fell back, injured and disoriented, he took the opportunity to shapeshift into a massive wolf, leaping into the fray with ferocity. The cryptids fought alongside him, each using their unique abilities to wreak havoc on the human forces. Yet for all their might, the military's numbers and firepower slowly began to overwhelm them. Nahai surveyed the battlefield, seeing the cryptids falling one by one. "The humans are stronger than I anticipated," he admitted to himself, "but I still have a few tricks up my sleeve." With a sudden burst of speed, Nahai darted through the chaos, evading bullets and tearing through the soldiers with his razor-sharp claws. He could feel the tide turning, and the thrill of the fight surged within him. But despite his best efforts, the military was relentless. Nahai knew that it was only a matter of time before they would have him cornered. As the remaining cryptids fell, Nahai found himself alone, surrounded by armed soldiers. He snarled, his eyes filled with malice, but he knew that this was a fight he could not win. Instead, he focused his energy on one last desperate ploy. Nahai called upon his dark powers, conjuring a thick cloud of darkness that enveloped the battlefield. As the soldiers stumbled in confusion, Nahai used the cover of darkness to slip away, narrowly avoiding capture. Though he had not emerged victorious, Nahai found himself intrigued by the prospect of imprisonment. These humans are weak-minded, he thought, a sinister smile creeping onto his face. I can bend them to my will, manipulate them as I see fit. As he contemplated his next move, Nahai knew that the humans had underestimated him and his kind. They had much to learn about the true nature of the cryptids they sought to control, and Nahai would make sure they paid dearly for their ignorance. Hidden away in the shadows, Nahai watched as the military rounded up the remaining cryptids. He knew that it was only a matter of time before they would come for him. But instead of dreading his capture, Nahai found himself eager to test the limits of his powers against the humans. In their arrogance, they believe they can control us, he mused, his eyes glowing with dark intent. They have no idea of the power they are dealing with. Soon enough, the military discovered Nahai's hiding place, and they closed in on him with a mix of fear and determination. Nahai made no attempt to resist, allowing himself to be captured with a grin that chilled the soldiers to their core. As they transported him to the prison, Nahai began to weave his dark magic, subtly bending the minds of those around him. He could sense their thoughts, their insecurities, and their fears, and he exploited them with ruthless precision. Upon arriving at the prison, Nahai was greeted with a mix of awe and fear by both the guards and the other prisoners. He knew that his reputation preceded him, and he intended to use it to his advantage. Slowly but surely, Nahai began to exert his influence over the prison population. He manipulated the guards, turning them against one another, and sowed discord among the prisoners. All the while he continued to hone his powers, growing stronger with each passing day. Nahai knew that he was playing a dangerous game. The humans were not entirely ignorant of his abilities, and they were constantly searching for ways to counteract his magic. But Nahai was confident in his cunning and his ability to stay one step ahead of them. As the days turned into weeks and then months, Nahai's control over the prison grew. His fellow prisoners began to look to him as a leader, and the guards were powerless to stop him. But Nahai never forgot the one creature who had managed to elude capture and face the military head-on: Cain. The whispers of his power and his defiance against the humans intrigued Nahai, and he could not help but feel a growing sense of respect for the ancient vampire. And as he bided his time, plotting his eventual escape and the downfall of his captors, Nahai began to wonder if perhaps one day their paths might cross. If that day were to come, he knew that the world would tremble before their combined might.